Good morning, everyone. It's Kaibon the Renegade. I'm here with a discussion video talking about my new book series, Godly. It's about the whole series, not just the first book, but we will be talking a good bit about that as well. So Godly, hang on, I should cut that out. So sorry this has taken so long to get out, but this is actually my third attempt at trying to make this happen. So I've made other attempts at this that I wasn't happy with, and this one hopefully will go for me. So let's see how it goes. Also, sorry if this seems kind of like disconnected or long-winded, or there's small spots of like airtime, but I'm not like editing this hard like I did for the book or the chapter reading. Because the chapter reading was essentially supposed to be like an audiobook form, and that was a ton of work. Like, you guys have no idea. Like, more than practically anything I ever do. And even when I put a montage or like a mini-tage in a video, that's not even close to the amount of work that it took and the effort to sit there and listen to myself and get the right take and cut it the right way so that it seemed natural and I can still hear the breaks, and I know that you guys probably can if you're listening for them, but hopefully you'll be so absorbed in the story that won't be the case. But anyway, so Godly as a series is about a lot of things. First off, it's majorly got three big components, okay? So we're invested in the mythological and like super-powered aspect. So if you know about the old Greek stories, like a lot of Greek heroes like Hercules, Heracles is the Roman version of Heracles, but Heracles was a demigod, and he had extraordinary strength, like he was essentially born with it. And I believe the way that his story went was if he got his hair cut, then his power would be gone, and that's more or less what his greatest weakness was. Godly kind of follows conventions like that. It tends to follow more anime-style stuff in terms of combat, power sets, and rule sets. The best way I can describe Godly as a series in terms of the power sets is you take Dungeons and Dragons, you slap some Naruto magic rule sets, some Avatar The Last Airbender elementalism, and then put it all under a Dragon Ball rule set, where it's kinda just how they say whoever has the most power, although it never really works out that way. You'll find almost every fight either comes down to some level of skill or something. You know, I've set up reasons for why these characters end up in and winning fights they win. I even took notes here, and I'm still struggling for things to talk about. So that's basically the first pillar of Godly, is the excitement and like the magical and fantasy aspect of it. That's one of the bigger portions. I try to make sure that every book has at least one major mythology reference, if not several. And if I can, I try to intertwine those in the story as well. Like when we're dealing with actual gods and goddesses, which happens more and more as we progress through the series, like we'll even be seeing it pretty heavily in the first book. By the end of the first book, you should know the major gods and goddesses of the Greek pantheon. You should know there are other pantheons out there, and you should feel like you're comfortable with the characters that you've spent a good amount of time with, basically. So yeah, that's more or less the first pillar of Godly. The next is talking about family values, morals, and politics, because I actually think all three are perfectly intertwined, regardless of people who do not think so. Anyone who says that a writer or a whatever they are should stick to what they do and keep politics out of it is obviously trying to dodge the fact that they've got strong points against the politics that they disagree with, you know? So you can try and tell me that I shouldn't be writing politics and that I should just stick to the mythology and the action and all of that. Well, I'm sorry. I think I'm pretty good at writing politics, and by the end of the series, you'll probably agree. You'll be seeing most of the politics in book 6, and I know that sounds like a long time away, but trust me, it's actually not, especially if I am doing these biannually releases, which I'm planning on for right now. Right now, I'm still working on book 7. It's about halfway done, and every other book is essentially done. I need to redo some of book 2, and yeah, otherwise all of them just need to be edited. That's it. And then they're ready to go out. Well, actually, I have to make covers for them. But yeah, edit them, covers for them, that's it. That's all I have left. Except for book 7, which halfway through. But, I mean, I'm gonna have that out, guys. Trust. It took me 3 or 4 years to get to this point, so that's how long I've been on hiatus, more or less, from YouTube, because I've been working on this. And trust, it's happening. Book 1 is out there, and people are reading it right now. I still don't have any reviews, but it's only been published for a freaking week. So, trust me, I think it's gonna happen here. So yeah, politics are an important part of Godly, because I'm actually trying to connect politics and morality, because I think it's very, very important that people stop connecting their wallets with politics and start connecting morality with politics. That should be basic. Politicians are people who work for the people, right? So doesn't that mean the morality of how we deal with people should be highly, goodly, moral, at the very least, you know? And that's part of what Godly wants to ask you. It wants to ask you what you think about that, essentially. Because Godly's not going to sit there and give you answers to every single question that it raises. It's going for a more philosophical, wow, how do I really feel about this when I present you situations? The first book has a little less of that. The second book has a lot more of that, interestingly. But I'm expecting the second book is probably going to be like a bit of a black sheep, because it's different from almost all of the rest of the series. It's not that different, but it is the shortest one, and it's like an adventure, but while the rest is more heavily intertwined with the story. But I'm working on that, and we will definitely be having that fixed before it comes out, trust me. I have a whole new chapter planned for that, but I'm severely off topic. Let's see here. The 3 pillars of Godly, right? The first one is the mythology, combat, fantasy core. The next is morality, character-driven, politics core. Like, you'll be seeing a lot of moral situations without any regard to politics, but those moral situations relate to them, and you'll probably understand that by the end of book 4 pretty heavily. Let's see. Then the final real pillar of Godly is I want to say the mythology, because the part of the mythology that I'm talking about is a little bit different. But, it's about divinity, if you will. Not necessarily real world religion and divinity, like, Christianity or Catholicism, it actually would be Roman Catholicism, are technically in my series. You will see tiny snippets of them, because they are there. But you will also get a lot more of the more fantastic mythologies. Like, the Norse mythology is really heavily explored. We see a decent chunk of Japanese mythology, because that's something I'm very interested in. We see a good chunk of Chinese mythology, because I'm also very interested in that. And when I get a team and some writers and some animators, and I'm working on the animated series for all of this, because that's the ultimate goal, is I'd like to also make, like, a movie. Wow, I'm jumping so far ahead, guys. I don't. Should I keep this one? Yeah, I'll try. Anyway, I'd like to try and make one involving the South African god. Well, not South African, the African gods, as many of them as I can involve. Say like a movie for that, or a side storybook. And I'd also like to do one for Aztec and Mayan gods, either one each or put them both together, because they are kind of close in relation. They're about as close as Greek and Roman, and they're more or less involved together in my series, so I don't see why that couldn't be a thing. But yeah, the only reason I want writers and a team behind that is because I don't understand enough of that mythology, and when I've tried to look into it, I feel so overwhelmed that I don't know where to start. So, yeah. But anyway, the big final pillar, divinity, is kind of shaky, if you will. I think it'll be clearly explained by the end of the series to you, because of the way I spread the conversation about it out. Because that's basically what my whole series is. The reason it's 7 books is so we can talk about the 2 things I want to talk about, which are morality and divinity, and then I want to talk about, and then I want to also spend time with epic fights, because I fucking love really cool action scenes and, super powers and super techniques and stuff, and you will see a lot of that in my series. There's always at least one fighting climax, usually, although I'll admit one of them isn't, super huge, just because I wanted to focus more on the, non-direct confrontational one, because I thought it was interesting to have 5 or 6 other books in the series that all had direct confrontation with big battle at the end, but then that one in particular, not the last one does have a big battle at the end, but one in particular has, just a situation that resolves itself in a certain way, and I felt it was a very powerful ending, so I kept it. But anyway, still way off track, aren't I, guys? Jeez. So, divinity. Divinity is complicated because we're not talking about any god in particular. We're not talking about any religion in particular. Have you ever heard the expression that cleanliness is next to godliness? Well, the reason my series is called Godly in the first place is because it's about connecting perfectionism, if you will, with godliness. And I don't necessarily mean perfectionism in, I don't mean it in the overarching stigma'd way where people are control freaks about things. I mean, when you've put your time and your effort and every ounce of your energy into a task, and you make sure that every little detail is gone over, you've perfected it. At that point, you are reaching godliness of a certain level, because that, in a certain way, is cleanliness. When you're ensuring the quality of whatever it is that you do, at that point, you're reaching godliness. That is what the series is really about, is trying to show people that humans and man aren't actually all that different from gods, and I know that sounds like blasphemy, but you've got to remember 2 very important things. First of all, there are over 4,200 religions in the world currently, today, right now. So that means that any religion out there that says this is the only right one and every other religion is wrong means that they're either extremely short-sighted and every other religion is wrong if one of them's right, or, on some level, they coexist and overlap, and some of them were created by people, right? Some of them. At the very least, some of them, out of 4,200, had to have been created by people. They don't all just have individual gods, right? And, I mean, sure, they can or slash do, but I don't mean that in the sense that every single one was made by a brand new god of whatever that religion is. I mean that the divines of ancient times came from people's minds. And that is a truth that I think everyone can see, especially nowadays, like it's obvious and clear. I'm not trying to stamp on anybody's religion right now. If you believe in whatever God you believe in, I mean, not just good for you, but I'm glad you found a tool to help you get through the difficult struggles of life, because hope is something that is in short supply, especially these days. With the pandemic and with all that's gone on in our country and just everything, hope is dwindling. And that's part of what I want Godly to be, is a torch that helps lift people up. So, godliness is something that anyone can exhibit in certain regards if we're considering it as perfection, right? So, what Godly is trying to say more than anything else is that the people who take the time and struggle and perfect and make sure that everything is actually to the liking of the others around them and themselves are the people that are reaching real godliness. They're the people that are actually going to be able to make real difference, change, and miracles. I'm worried that people are going to point at my series and be like, you're just straight up copying Dragon Ball. But it's not only not even close to that, but that's kind of a fucking joke of a statement. My series does play a lot of homage to Dragon Ball, a lot of it. But it is not even close to copying it. So you need to, like, check yourselves if that's a thing. But for real, guys, Godly is hopefully going to be the next big thing, just because it does mash elements of some of the best things together. Like, imagine if we really lived in a world where not only could you gain skills of thievery, or, like, be a magician, or be of different races. Like, you could be a fowling or a lizard person. And, wouldn't it be cool if you could control an element, or all of the elements, which is a thing that you can do in the series. Or, I already said magic, didn't I? Oh, you could be a psychic. You could use psychic powers. There's 3 major classes of dragonic, divine, and demonic, which are important and basically constant through the series. Hang on, let me look at my notes. Okay, so the reason I was talking about why people will compare it to Dragon Ball, there's the aura transformations, which is kind of a thing that I could see people going, hey, the fuck, that's totally ripping off Dragon Ball. But people have been doing aura transformations for ages now, and Dragon Ball was one of the first, but for real, it's got more to its transformations. There's the hair standing up and turning golden. Excuse me. Ugh, that didn't feel good. But yeah, there's your hair standing up and turning a color. That's not a thing for the aura transformations in Godly. And you actually see them as soon as the gods are on stage, because basically every god in my series has an aura transformation. There's a couple that don't, and you'll see them later in the series. They're not in the first book. Aura transformation is kind of a big part of the series because it's linked to characters' emotions, so it's essentially supposed to show you an insight into not just how that person views themselves, but how they view their power, their force in the world, and their control over what they can do. Let's see. But yes, the reason I wanted to talk about it being kind of similar to Dragon Ball is because I've noticed that the Dragon Ball Super manga is currently talking about, and I won't spoil anything here, but it's currently talking about destroyers and creators in a way. So apparently, I'm not going any farther than what I'm going to say here. Vegeta is being trained as a god of destruction, and Goku is being essentially trained as an angel, but I'm not entirely sure that that's true. Regardless of that, my series has a god of destruction and god of creation like deep in the series lore, and it's a part of the overarching story of the entire thing. It is 7 books, as I said, but the story in the very end of the last book has to do with something that started all the way in the first book, and you'll see it unravel as the series comes together. Let's see. So I actually can't talk too much about gods of creation or destruction, because that's a huge spoiler in the series, and I don't want to give everything away. But the reason it's so important is because it is a huge part of the series. The 3 biggest points that are explored in Divinity more than just about anything else in terms of the gods themselves are going to be creation, change, and destruction. Well, I should say it the other way. Destruction, change, and creation. Because you take something, you destroy it, and that changes it so that you can create something new. And that's essentially how basically everything in life works, if you think about it a certain way. So that's part of why I wanted to make sure it was a huge inclusion in the series, because anytime that you decide that something that's a part of you is something you don't like, at that point you've decided, hey, I don't like this about myself. And I used to say this all the time when I was a teenager: if you don't like something about yourself, change it. That's not as easy as it's said, because what I didn't realize when I was a teenager is that you need to destroy in order to create. You don't need to destroy everything, but there is something in particular that you need to destroy. So if you've decided that there's something you don't like about yourself, like right now I've been putting on a bit of weight because I've been eating a whole bunch of crappy fatty foods, right? Like I've been eating pizza nonstop and Kentucky Fried Chicken because I worked there, and a whole bunch of stuff, right? So I don't like that I'm starting to put on weight, so what I'm going to do about it is I'm going to change my diet. So that means the part of me that craves all those gross, fatty, disgusting foods that I actually really like, that part of me has to kind of get destroyed if I want to hold on to the aspect of becoming a healthier person, right? So, it doesn't have to actually be completely destroyed, but I have to destroy the part of it that's got a hold over me. I have to end the point where I am unable to say no to myself and make it so that I'm getting the food that I actually need. I need to be eating more vegetables and more fruit and fucking, I need to eat better. It's basic. Everybody knows how to eat better, but so many of us choose not to. Including myself. Up until now, I had been choosing not to. So I had to destroy the part of me that... I still have to destroy the part of me that's choosing not to eat better. Like, I fucking had been eating pizza for breakfast. And mind you, I would just reheat that and eat it for dinner, but it's still not good. You can't just have a pizza basically every day. That's not good for you. That's horrible. And I'm feeling it. I feel the effects. And I don't like it. So now I've got to destroy that part of me, change that part of me, and become a new part of me. Right? I have to destroy, change, and create. And that cycle in particular of destruction, creation, and change, all 3 of those things, that equivalent exchange cycle, like in Fullmetal Alchemist, is essentially the entirety of life. Anything that you do, whether it's, anything, no matter what it is, it can all be something that needs to be changed. I used to say, no matter how long you've been doing something, it doesn't really matter. It could just be the amount of time you've been doing it wrong. And I saw another quote recently that was, you should be as confident in your ability as someone is in their mediocrity. Because there are lots of people who go through life thinking that what they're doing in a mediocre fashion is excellent. And it's true. If you look, there are people who think they do a great fucking job, and everything that they do is fantastic, and their shit doesn't stink. And you know what? It does. It does stink. Fucking go watch Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares. You will see person after person after person who has deluded themselves. They've managed to trick themselves into thinking, no, I'm a good dude. No matter what I've done here, I've been trying to do my best and help everybody and blah, 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 your justification. And that is part of what Godly's about, is breaking down justifications, trying to get people to actually take looks at themselves. And that includes me. Like, anyone who looks at me and says, Zach, if you're doing this, I'd really like you to stop, that rings a bell in my mind. That makes me go, oh, I'm doing something this person doesn't like. Now I need to deal with the consequence of that and try and figure out how I can do better. Because I don't like bringing people down. When I upset people, it upsets me. So yeah, there's that. Hang on, gotta open my notes again. My notes. So, change is a huge important part of the series because essentially destruction and creation are both forms of change, right? When you create something, you've created something new that affects things, so that is now changed. You've either changed a space, you've changed something that was affected, whatever, it has been changed, right? When you destroy something, obviously you're changing it from its previous form to either smaller pieces or something else, you know? And just change overall is a huge, huge part of the series, and you'll see it running constantly through it. So you should notice right away that there are two people in particular that are very strongly pushing people to change in very particular ways. And you might not see it right from the get-go at the very least. But once we get to book 3, you'll definitely see it. It will be in front of your face. And then hopefully by book 5, you'll have seen it in the other person. And those two in particular are very important to the story. You'll find that there are gods of lots of things in my series, from not just the regular gods like Nike, the goddess of victory, who I mentioned in a previous video, or say Hephaestus, the god of, I think it's masonry? It's forging, I'm pretty sure. I don't think masonry is actually the right word because he smiths, so maybe the god of the smithy. But yeah, you'll also be seeing a lot of new gods of things. So say there's the new god of strength. Hang on, where is it? Wait, I don't have new god of strength on here? I thought I did. If you don't know Heracles' story, so this is kind of dark actually, so just trigger warning real quick. Heracles is driven insane. I can't remember by who, but it's someone who the conflict of his story was like really involved with. He was driven insane by them. He killed his own wife and his children, and then he killed himself. So there is no god of strength in my series, apparently, because I don't have it written down here. But there's a new god of asserting change. There's a new god of inciting change. There's a new god of creation and destruction, which I won't spoil because that's huge spoilers. new god of comedy, balance, perseverance, respect, unity, self-discipline, justice, and kindness. And I think that's a lot. You know, those are a lot of new gods. You won't see all of them through the mainline series take those places. You will see some of them, though. Most of them will do that in a side series called, well, at least right now, it's codenamed Godly SS for side stories. They would essentially be the movies that I have planned. And I want to make most of these characters come through to their divine form in a movie called Godly Odyssey, which would actually be a story with... I really don't want to spoil too much. But anyway, it would be a story that covers... it starts in Greek mythology and then would branch out and show aspects of every mythology in shorter stories, essentially, where those new gods could reach their potential. That's the most spoilers I'm giving away for that, because that's a big-ass fucking movie, and I don't want to spoil everything about it. So one of the best parts of my series is that you can actually reach basically any height up to a certain cap, essentially, just through sheer training, force of will, and effort alone. So if you're a psychic and you want to be the most powerful psychic in the world, as long as you're sticking to something that you can't be capped on, like, you know, just general psychic abilities, basically, you're not focusing on one thing like pyrokinesis, but you want to learn it all, eventually you could do that through training, effort, perseverance, and force of will. It would take a long-ass time, but you could do it, unless you're, like, super gifted. Your potential is usually dictated by, I want to say your blood, but that sounds so dirty and racist. Your potential is essentially dictated by two things. Number one is your attitude, and number two is your perceptiveness, or not perceptiveness, your willingness to actually change and grow, right? So, if your attitude is not really geared towards gaining your strength or knowledge or skill or art or whatever it is, then you're obviously not going to progress as fast as someone who's like deeply entrenched in what they're doing. They love what they're doing and they want to keep getting better at it, you know? Like, that's something that's true of the real world, so certain rules like that are true of the series. But yeah, truths are essentially one of the biggest things that I try and focus on, because the Greeks believe in something called pistis, which is essentially inherent truth. It's something that carries its truth through its own physical being, right? So, if a cow had a brand mark on it from a rival farmer or something in your farm, then you would assume that that brand that you know is on that farmer's cattle came from that person. That is essentially what pistis means. Proof that is tangible. Truth is essentially supposed to be pistis, but it isn't. Truth can be something that works for people. And the thing of it is that people tend to hold on to lies as if they're truth. And a lot of the lies that they hold on to are either lies that they were told or lies that they've told themselves, right? So, for the longest time, I believed that I basically couldn't do anything. I thought I was stupid. I thought I was fucking weak. I thought basically anything that you can think negatively of yourself, I thought it, because my parents, branded that into me. They beat it into me so hard that by the time I was 16, I knew I needed to leave, or I was going to never actually amount to anything just like they told me, because not just was I starting to believe them, but I really felt like I didn't have potential, or I didn't have passion, I didn't have anything, because my life was just miserable constantly. So that was a truth I believed at the time, but it wasn't a truth, it was a lie. I can be something just like anyone else can. You know, I had to put myself into it and try to put my best self ahead of it, because if I didn't, then I was definitely going to get left behind, you know? And, I mean, sure, you can look at me and say I'm unsuccessful so far, and I technically have been, but I feel more successful than I ever would have felt living with them, and I know that because I felt fucking miserable growing up. But now, things are, well, I don't want to say things are fantastic, but you know what I mean, guys. Like, things finally feel like I'm right on the track that I need to be on, where even if a job or whatever it is stops working out, you know, I'm still pretty much set. I think that, very soon, things are gonna start changing for a lot of people and getting better. Especially with what's been going on with President Biden, but I'm trying to keep certain politics separate. I know basically anybody who knows me knows how I feel about Trump, so I'm not even gonna get into it. Hope this hasn't been demonetized just from putting those two people's names in this, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, so on the whole, the biggest things other than moralities and politics is part of morality. Morality and divinity that we're going to be talking about in Godly is family. I know I just talked real shit about my family, but some of my family is actually really, really nice. Like, my grandma has read every book up until the 7th one, because I haven't finished it yet. And she loves them, and she's been so fucking supportive. Like, if it weren't for my grandma, my books wouldn't be written right now. They would be an idea in my head, because I was going to start writing them when I was 30, and I'm 28 right now, and I'm almost done writing them, you know? So, without her support, I don't think those books will ever happen, or would have ever happened, I mean. But the first one's published now, so I basically feel like I'm walking on air right now. It's only been out for a week, and I'm finally starting to come down from the high of, wow, I've got a fucking published book, and I'm a published author. That's really cool. I actually feel like I have a career instead of a job, because if publishing books works out, then I won't have to keep working at frickin' KFC. Because nobody likes working at KFC. Trust me. Even though one guy who's talked himself into thinking he likes working at KFC, it's so obvious he hates it. But yeah, family. Family is a really important part of Godly, because I see so many people these days that have kids and they hate children. And it's like, what are you doing, guy? If you hate kids, why do you have them? And he's like, well, I like sex. And it's like, yeah, but sure, but come on, you know better. This is somebody's life we're dealing with. And Godly goes really hard on that. You guys will see that a lot. I don't actually advocate for it in the book series, because at the time, there really isn't any way in ancient history to do safe abortions. Personally, as part of my political beliefs, I do think women should have the right to abortion if they choose so, and I do think that if their man is in agreement as well, and, you know, they both think that they should not have this baby, that they should have the right to abort them. I'm not able to really talk about it in the series because of, you know, the time frame. It's set in the year 380 or so, at the start. So there's no safe abortion then, and I don't really want to go into abortion. I actually kind of think I should now in book 7, because I do actually have room for it. There would be a perfect spot, but I think that would be horrible. I don't ever want to talk about abortion in my series, because I think that people should be more responsible with their sex. Obviously, it's not always that simple. Obviously, okay? There are rapes, and there are times of drunkenness, and it happens, okay? I'm not trying to discredit anybody, and no one should have to be ashamed of the way they feel about a mistake that they made, you know? And no child should grow up in a household being told they were a mistake their entire life. And kids get that. And the thing is, I grew up in one of those households. I was told I was a mistake my whole life and that they wish they had never had me. And you know what? That's miserable. That fucking sucks. Most people don't come back from that. If you live your whole life in that, you're not going to recover. I mean, you're going to have damage for the rest of your life. I know I do. And I'm not ashamed to admit that, because that damage that I have is something that's shown me so much. It's taught me more than they ever taught me as individuals. You know, I've learned from trying to process my pain, and that's something that will definitely show hard in my characters. One character, Junia, is almost entirely my pain. She does have some of my other characteristics, like my happiness and, you know, some other stuff. But one of her strongest parts is clearly the pain. And it's meant to be that way. I want you guys to see on full display how hurt I was, at the very least. Because I think that when you see it from her perspective, in her situation, written as if it were her pain, you're going to agree that, holy shit, it's a nightmare. Junia and my lives do not coincide whatsoever. Junia had abusive parents, obviously, but she had abusive gods as parents, and her situation is literally the most extreme that any child's could ever be, and I made it that way on purpose. I wanted to show just how miserable people can be made through basically anything. And when it comes to parent and child relationships, which is extremely important, and part of why family is such an important theme of Godly. You'll see that the three main characters outside, well, there's actually four. There's four main characters, right? There's Jacob Godly, the one you will think is the main character for the beginning of the series. His sister Junia Godly, who will be revealed to be his sister later on in the first book, but it's not exactly more than halfway through, so it's not a huge spoiler. And Jacob's best friend, Damon Godly, who takes on the moniker but isn't actually related. Well, I mean, technically he is. Technically, literally everyone's related in my universe because of the way the universe was born. But that's a conversation for another day. And then the actual main character is Videl Godly, Jacob's daughter. So, Jacob, Damon, and Videl all have essentially normal childhoods. Videl's is a little less normal than Jacob and Damon's were, because she's a pure demigod, which is something that, when a demigod and a demigod make a child, that child is a pure demigod, because both of their parents are demigods, right? So they have two human halves and two divine halves, which essentially mean they are both man and God, right from the moment they're born. They grow at twice the pace of a normal person, and that means every part of them, their mind, their body, all of it. You know, by the time they're 10 years old, they're essentially 20 physically, mentally, and everything that goes along with that. Not obviously in experience, but they have sharper memories than most kids. So, you know, that's kind of how that goes. But anyway, back to Junia. Junia grew up under Eris, the goddess of chaos, and her grandfather, well, not Eris's grandfather, it's Eris's father, Chaos. Chaos, I really don't want to go into because it's a huge spoiler for the first book, and he's an important character through most of the series. But Junior's raising, right? So, Chaos has this pyramid where, he's keeping lots of different kinds of animals, because Chaos's job is essentially to create new types of life, right? And I know you know exactly where this is going. Chaos uses his chaos magic to fuse, animal sperm with human, well, actually I should say, human and animal sperm with human and animal eggs to make chimeras. They have to be done that way. It's through the womb, and it's kind of disgusting, and it's meant to be. The reason I made it that way is so that it is mortifying, and it is very clearly not a moral thing to do, okay? I designed it, like, every good writer should make their villain either likable or entirely unlikable, and Chaos is in the second category by far. Everyone who watches or reads my series will hate Chaos by the end of it. They will hate him because of all the awful, horrible things that he does, both to the main characters and just to people in the series. And it's awful. Like, trust me. So, the way Junia was raised, she was basically never spoken to at all. She had a wet nurse from when she was born. By the time she was able to walk, she was in Eris's care. And Eris either basically dumped her on the nurse, or dumped her outside and gave her some kind of command. She would put her somewhere, wherever she thought the best test would be, or training, or whatever Eris was basically calling it. You know, her justification for teaching a little girl to be a murderer. And she would give her an instruction on what to do, whether it was kill someone, or everyone, or something, you know. Horrible things. Always horrible. So Junia was a tortured little girl. When she was old enough to walk, Chaos input something inside her that was a spell that binds her to his will. If Chaos chooses, he can take absolute control of Junia, and he can make her do anything that he wants her to do as long as she's not in another god's realm. Junia can very, very, very slightly resist, but otherwise she's under his complete control, right? Junia remembers everything that Chaos makes her do. Chaos can talk for her, and Chaos can even speak through her mind. So just take all that in. Junia, from the age of, 2, essentially, was being controlled by Chaos and quote-unquote taught how to do horrible, unspeakable things. So she grew up very fucked up. But by the time she was, I think it was 15, she was allowed to, well, I say allowed, she was sent to Mount Olympus to learn from the Divines for the Tournament of Champions that was coming up. And that's essentially how Jacob meets her. But that is brought up a few times because we need Junia to explain to her children how bad some children have it. Because, frankly, the kids that are going to be a main part of the series from the 4th book onward, those kids have it fucking great. Like, they get to go to parties all the time. They basically get to do whatever they want, have free roam of the town. Sure, they have to go to school and stuff, but that's regular kid stuff, you know? They live regular kid lives, plus because they have, you know, gods as aunties and uncles who are always giving them nice fucking magical gifts and stuff. But yeah, they live the high life, essentially. So we have Junia, who was raised horribly to heavily contrast. And Junia is going to be a person who strongly breaks the cycle of abuse. When you piss her off, yeah, she's a fucking horror show and you don't want to be near her. But she doesn't really take that out on her kids, basically ever. Like, it's clear that the kids know not to piss her off. But, for real, she never hits her kids ever, even though her husband does several times in the series. And that's intentional, because we're trying to continue the juxtaposition of a good family and a bad family to show what a healthy relationship between children and adults should look like. And honestly, a lot of people would say it's not that hard and you don't need books to tell you to do it and blah, 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 blah. And I'm sorry, but if it's not that hard, why are there so many abusive families out there? I came from one. Almost everyone I know, I say almost everyone, it's about half the people I know, either have come from an abusive family or know someone who has been in an abusive family. And that's shocking. That's too many people. We need more adults who will continue to break the cycle of abuse. Like, I really strongly intend to. And I've already been shown that I do have a mildly abusive pattern, because when I was with Ashley, I spanked her son too much and too hard, because I was furious and I was frustrated. And, yeah, sure, it was spanking, but she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're fucking abusing him, and I'm not gonna stand here and take it." And that woke me up. That made me go, whoa, what am I doing? How did I become this person? You know? So, that's kind of the through line of the series as far as family is concerned, because you're gonna start seeing more and more about family from book 3 onward. Book 1 and 2 are kind of establishing shots, if you will. Book 1 sets up the story very strongly. Book 2 sets up, like, it continues to set up the story from where book 1 left off, but it also sets up, ideas of mythology, other religions, other mythologies, you know, traveling as part of the story, setting up broken up stories that continue to reach to the theme, which is part of godly as well, but you'll see it more strongly in book 2 and from that onward. Let's see. Basically, what I want Godly to say is that I think people have kind of forgotten what it means to truly be good. And I don't mean everybody. Obviously, there are still lots of good people out there. But the way people become bad people is they think they're a good person even though they do bad things, right? They justify their bad behavior with quote-unquote good reasons, or whatever they have. You know, they make justifications, and they don't actually face the truth of what it is that they're doing. And that is one of the biggest things that Godly has to say. Because people today, some of them at the very least, they can't even come near admitting they're wrong, much less that they've done something wrong, or, you know, that they may be responsible for something, or what have you. It's so strange to me that today people not only won't accept responsibility, but they flat out refuse to have it pressed on them even when they're actually in a position of responsibility. Like, my manager at KFC in particular, just doesn't take responsibility for certain things, and, when she is forced into a position where she has to, she either just stands there and bitches, delegates other people to do it, or, she breaks down. And none of those things are good responses to taking responsibility. Like, you're really gonna stand there and cry because your boss is yelling at you? You're gonna cry in front of all your employees? I mean, he wasn't even yelling at her. He was just, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and you need to shape up, or we're gonna let you go. And she's like, well, I've been here for 15 years, and it's like, yeah, well, you need to step up to standards, lady. And, okay, yeah, that's not really an appropriate time to cry. You're showing that you're more broken down. You've let the business get through you, essentially. And now your lies, the lies that you've told yourself about how great the business is, they're all crumbling. I saw this interesting video a couple years back. I think it was, it wasn't Thought Slime, it was Renegade Cut? I think it was Renegade Cut. They said that Gordon Ramsay is not God. And you're right, Gordon Ramsay is not God. But you know what Gordon Ramsay is? Godly. Gordon Ramsay is a perfectionist. He actually had to go to, I want to say rehab, but I'm not sure that's the right word. His brother is an addict, and I'm not going to say anything more about that than that. Obviously, I feel deeply concerned for his brother, and I hope he gets better. But Gordon Ramsay had to go into rehab with him because he was deemed a perfectionist. He was deemed someone who will not let small details go. And he agrees that he is a perfectionist. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that being absolutely 100% perfect is always the best thing, because sometimes you're overdoing it. Sometimes it's too much and you need to let go a little bit. It can be very slightly imperfect. Like, obviously we don't want the important things to be imperfect, but if it's just a tiny whatever it is, like, sure, you don't want filth on your plates, you don't want your whatever it is. But if you put 4 carrots on there instead of 3, I don't think the customer's going to be upset, That's something that Gordon Ramsay had to face. And being a perfectionist doesn't make you godly, but seeking perfection, in a way, does. And Gordon Ramsay's not God. You're right. He can be wrong. He can make mistakes. He can admit when he's done something incorrectly. But the fact is, when someone truthfully seeks that perfection, thank you, airplane, when someone truthfully seeks that perfection, that is where you will truly find divinity. Whether it's in combat, your studies, your ideals, your philosophy, your desire to help your community, your restaurant, your whatever it is that you have that you think makes you different. If you seek perfection in that, eventually you will get somewhere near it if you try. Again, you don't have to get absolutely everything right. I have details all over the place in my series that are probably not very good. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say that everything I've written is anywhere near perfect. I know me, and I'm not a perfect person. I make a lot of mistakes, and I can be a very stupid person when I don't think things through. But when I think things through, when I spend the time and focus on it and work diligently and try to make something actually come out of what it is that I'm making, usually it turns out for me. And that's part of the biggest message of Godly, is that no matter who you are, no matter what you think you can do, if you try to reach for the stars, you might just find your hand around one, And then there's farther to go. You can go to the sun, and then you can go higher than that. You can find the next place to go through the light of the sun that you've found. And I know that all kind of sounds like some crazy bullshit, but it's philosophy, it's metaphor, it's kind of who we are as people. Look at society. Look at the way we continue to advance. Buildings, technology, medicine, everything, all of it. we're just constantly getting closer and closer to something we might be able to call perfection. And sure, nothing will ever be actually perfect, but we can have perfect of the time. And that's what it means. That's where the godliness truly is. If cleanliness is next to godliness, perfection is next to divinity. Right? So that's what it means. That's why effort is what will get you more powerful in my series, because I truthfully think that's how it works in real life. I truthfully think that when you actually put yourself to the thing that you're trying to accomplish, and you're willing to do anything to make it happen, up to, your morals, basically, at that point, you should make it happen. And if it doesn't, well, either the world isn't working for you in the way that it's supposed to right there, or it wasn't meant to be. And you can try again and again, because any way that you fail is just a way you didn't succeed. And you should use that failure and learn from it. And that's how you reach your perfection, If you haven't failed at something, you haven't tried it enough times. That's one of the best things I can ever give for advice for people. And Godly breathes that. You will see that through the series in practically every line. Especially when you look at Damon, because Damon is more or less the Vegeta or the Sasuke of my series. He's the Lancer. You will see that in Damon hard. So if you really think that might be worth it, I really want you to check it out. Jacob Godly is a fire elementalist, uses a crystal buster sword. Damon Godly is a lightning elementalist who uses a katana, is extremely fast and a talented swordsman. Junior Godly is a water elementalist who uses a knife. Her knife is filled with water, so she can control it wherever. And Videl Godly is a mage who's a crystal elementalist, and she can use her crystals to help with her magic. So, all of that is just, it's the window dressing. It's the, here, relate to my characters because they're pretty cool, and now see the stories that unfold through them. See both the action and the personal conflict, because I think that is what it really takes to connect people with characters. Maybe not all of them, like, you don't have to have this deep interpersonal connection with a character to like them, but when you do, it just makes the connection so much stronger, and I hope that rings true in my series. But I've been at this for like an hour and 5, so hopefully that's an hour to 45 minutes. So thanks everybody for watching this discussion video about the Godly series as a whole. I hope it's been informative. I hope it's helped you decide whether or not you were interested in the book. And if you're not interested, I beg you, please give it a try in the Kindle version, because it's only $5 or free if you have the Kindle book program. So give it a shot. I think you will really enjoy it if you enjoy fantasy, mythology, and history. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. I've been Kaibon the Renegade. If you like this video, please leave a like. If you really like this video, please share it with all your friends. I'll see you guys next time. Hope you have a great day. Bye.